Well, good morning, Gospel Life Church. Just wanted to do something a little different for the weekly devotional this week. What I wanted to do was just have you read a passage on your own. And I wanted to challenge you just in a few areas around this passage. I wanted you to read John chapter 1, verses 1 through 18. It's a passage that I went through with the teens this week. We started the summer study with the teenagers, which is really the highlight of my year with youth ministry. It's just a different setting than youth group. It's a little more focused, a little bit more in depth in the Word, and we always have a great turnout in the summer, even despite some kids being in and out with vacations and things like that. But this year, the group's large enough that we're actually going to split the group out between the junior high and the senior high. So, be praying for that as well, as they meet every Tuesday early afternoon. So when we look today at John chapter 1 and the start of John's gospel, we saw a few different things. One, it's different than the other gospels, right? It doesn't start with the birth narrative. Kind of jump right in. You actually don't see Jesus mentioned by name until near the end of that passage. And what I want to challenge you with when you read that today is to try to read it as a first-time reader or first-time listener of that passage. And my hope in that, when you look at that, you would have some joy through that. You get to see your Savior. You get to learn about your Savior in a very new way. If it's new to you, there should be excitement when you read that passage. So you see in that passage, obviously the Word becoming flesh and the importance of that, and what that means to us as believers. You get introduced to John the Baptist, and I don't know how you can't really look at John the Baptist and not think about how to live radical for Jesus Christ. Obviously he was a unique person, but outside of that, he knew what his role was, and he was not focused on himself. He was focused on pointing people towards Christ. Also in that passage, you see the reoccurring theme of Jesus bringing grace and truth into the world. And I think if you focus in on that, if you meditate on those verses, it'll be powerful for you. So that's my first challenge around that passage, is just to read it as a first time reader. The next challenge would be to read that passage with a new believer or an unbeliever. So try to find somebody that you can say, hey, I'm going to be reading through a little bit of the Bible. Would you like to do that with me? It's interesting to even see something of some facial expressions, some things that we take for granted when it comes to that passage that are actually a little bit confusing, a little bit challenging, and not maybe what you're used to reading if you don't have a background in the Bible. The last thing is, if you don't have an opportunity to do that, I would encourage you to grab a Gospel of John in the back of the church under the going sign this week when you're at church, and just distribute one or two of those over the next week. It is a great place for somebody to start. John's message is all trying to show the listeners and the readers that Jesus is the Messiah, and he's the way to true life. So a message that we need to be proclaiming, and one of the reasons why we keep those Gospel of Johns in the back of the church. So enjoy reading the passage this morning. Thanks.